We had fight night in New Jersey, an NHL legend still playing at a high level, an amazing return to the ice for a Sabre. The Ducks' resurgence continues, and the Sharks continue to score. Details coming up on this edition of Locked On NHL Game Night.
When that final horn sounds, you know it's time for Locked On NHL Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. Prepare to experience game day reactions like never before. Only on Locked On NHL Game Night. Your team every day.
Hey, hockey fans, welcome to Locked On NHL Game Night, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network, your teams every day. Thanks for making Locked On NHL Game Night your place to get a recap of the night in the NHL during the regular season and the playoffs. We are available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. I'm Eddie Garcia, an LA Kings fan out on the West Coast. He is Alex Wiederspiel, a New York Rangers fan on the East Coast. And together we are here to help you get caught up on all the goal saves, big moments, and stories from the night in the NHL with a big assist from our Locked On local experts. 5 games in the National Hockey League on Monday night. And Alex, you and I have talked about it's a nice small number that we can really kind of focus in and get a good feel on all the teams that were in action.
I really enjoy being able to watch this way, especially the West Coast games where I feel like, you know, when they're staggered on certain nights and it's like, okay, I got to watch the third period of this game. No, I was able to watch pretty much the entire 60 minutes of both late games. So that was pretty nice. By the way, I love Rangers fan on the East Coast, but I'm always wearing WVU gear. So that's my one thing. There's not enough hockey in West Virginia. So
there's nothing wrong with representing your alma mater. Nothing wrong at all.
Yeah.
Let us go. We're going to go in the order in which the games were played, and we will start in New Jersey, where the Devils were hosting the Blue Jackets. And I got to be honest, Alex, I did not expect this matchup to be the matchup that featured a lot of fights. There was another one a little bit later on. I thought maybe that one, because there's history, there's a rivalry, but no, Blue Jackets Devils turned out to be a spirited game. New Jersey would get the 5-3 victory in this one. It was actually the Blue Jackets got the 5-3 victory in this one. I apologize, Columbus, for shorting you on that. Sean Monahan had a couple of goals for the Blue Jackets, numbers 4 and 5 on the season. And we had Columbus getting a point in their 5th of the last 6 games. Just one win over that span, but they are banking some points. A nice road victory for Columbus against a Devils team that had been almost unbeatable at home and now suddenly have dropped 2 in a row on home ice. And there were 4 fights in the second period in this one, a total of 74 penalty minutes. It all centered around a fight that started kind of innocently enough. Brandon Dillon of the Devils got into a fight, and he either took a punch that got him in a bad spot, or when he fell down, he hit his head on the ice, but he looked like he was in a really bad way, had to be helped off the ice, couldn't skate on his own. And that kind of set the tone. There was, the Devils wanted to answer for that. The Blue Jackets wanted to stand up for themselves. So, there was a lot going on in this one, but in the end, a nice win for the Columbus Blue Jackets on the road.
Part of my theory on the fighting probably has something to do with how close the entire league is, right? But in this particular case, I also think it has something to do with the Metro Division. That division looks right now, if it's not the best division, it's certainly the deepest division. And I think because of that, you see it kind of night in and night out. Teams are rotating in and out of playoff spots because 1 through 8 right now, I don't know that you have a deeper division. I think the 8th place team, which might be the New York Rangers, the 8th place team in the Metro Division would be 4th in almost every other division at the moment. It's wild. So I think that might have something to do with the violence.
Denton Matejchuk, Charlie Coyle, Miles Wood also getting goals in addition to the 2 from Sean Monahan for Columbus. For New Jersey, Nico Hischier gets his 10th, Timo Meier his 10th, but they lose again. Their second in a row on home ice. They went the first 10 games of the season at home without a regulation loss, but now have dropped 2 in a row. And a disappointing night for Brandon Dillon. He was celebrating his 1,000th career NHL game in this one. He's an undrafted player. So to get to 1,000 games, that guy has obviously worked hard for it. His family is in attendance, and then they see him go down, get hurt. He came back on the bench. I think he might have played a shift or two, but then they took him off after that and decided not to play him. And so New Jersey had to go over half of this game with only 4 defensemen because Jonas Siegenthaler got thrown out because he didn't have his jersey tied down. So he got a game misconduct for that. So a lot of minutes logged by 4 defensemen for New Jersey. I'm sure that didn't help things as well in this one for him.
I've really enjoyed, by the way, listening to Brendan Dillon on the PDO cast with Dmitry Filipovich. He's got great insight into the game. If folks have never listened to that, he's really good. Just one note here on the Devils, just they're 9 games now, I believe, without Jack Hughes, 4-5 in that stretch. It's not bad. Like, it's not horrible, but they're going to have to find a way. Like, you got to turn some of those losses into overtime losses at bare minimum, or shootout losses or whatever. You got to find a way to get a loser point in there in some way. I think if they go 27 games without Hughes and they're 12-15, not the end of the world, but they got to do a little better.
And for Columbus, it's not Jack Hughes, but they were missing Kirill Marchenko and Boone Jenner in this one. So again, real nice road win for Columbus. This was the game I thought we might see some rough stuff. The Flyers hosting the Penguins, right?
You would
Battle
think.
Battle of the Keystone State, but actually not really. Pittsburgh relatively easily knocks off the Flyers by a score of 5-1. Sidney Crosby continues to be absurd. 2 goals in this one, numbers 17 and 18. And I thought, I wonder what milestone Sid will hit in this one, half jokingly. And then I look and I see, his 300th career road goal, 14th player in NHL history to accomplish that feat. It's something every night. Tristan Jarry continues to play really well. He's 8-2 now, allowed 1 goal on 29 shots. So the victory for Pittsburgh in this one. Let's check in, though, on the other side of this one as we get a report from one of the co-hosts of Locked On Philadelphia Flyers, and that is Rachel Donner.
Jason Forster to a freak injury was not on the Flyers bingo card for tonight, and that might have been the bigger loss than the 5-1 score. Hi, I'm Rachel Donner from Locked On Flyers. Seeing the Flyers' top goal scorer leave the game following an awkward one-timer shortly after scoring the Flyers' only goal of the game was cause for great concern as they announced Forster would not return. As for the rest of the game, it got very chippy, as games between these two teams often do, but it was a big determining factor in the outcome on special teams. The Flyers were just 1 for 6 overall on the man advantage, while the Pens were 3 for 4. And that's just unacceptable for the penalty kill, even against one of the top power plays in the NHL. You could chalk this up to being one of those games, but there were also very specific things the Flyers just could not execute on, both defensively and offensively. And regardless, you learn what you can and you move on to the next one versus Buffalo. We'll have more on this game on the Tuesday show of the Locked On Flyers podcast.
And Rachel hitting the nose on the head. Special teams, obviously a huge advantage for Pittsburgh in this one. And as she mentioned, Tyson Forster, a very bizarre injury. He's just following through on a one-timer. He falls to his knees and then he goes off holding his shoulder and doesn't return. So certainly a concern for Philadelphia with that injury.
Yeah, that's one we're going to have to be monitoring. The other storyline here I think you got to pay attention to is Dan Vladar, because while he's been really good, there's, I think a fair question of whether or not Dan Vladar can be really good for an entire season in a starter's role. And I'm going to be watching for games like this because this is going to be way above. I'm going back in my head now, and actually, I think I found it. Dan Vladar has never played more than 30 games in a single season. It's likely they're going to be counting on him to play a lot more than that. He's at 15, actually make it 16 already, and we are in the early stages of December. We know the deeper on to the season goes, the harder it is for goalies to maintain their level. I do wonder, this is a big workload for Dan Vladar. He's never done this before through the first 6 to 7 to 8 weeks of the season. I'll be paying attention. Tonight was a concern for me with his goaltending.
Very fair point. For Pittsburgh, they bounced back from that ugly 7-2 loss to Toronto, and they've now won 3 of 4 as they started great, and then they kind of dipped, and now maybe they're turning it around a little bit. We'll see. We shall see. We had an amazing return for a Buffalo Sabre to the ice tonight, and the Ducks continue their surprising season. We'll get into that next here on Locked On NHL Game Night. NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlighted moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift, a receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment. Live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. Player props update as guys heat up. And you can bet who will score the next touchdown, what will happen on the next drive, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, and every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action as the season heats up, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, so can you. All right, up next, we have the Buffalo Sabres hosting the Winnipeg Jets. First of 2 meetings this week between these two teams, and this one was all Buffalo, a 5-1 victory, and the Sabres welcomed back Josh Norris in this one, and he was a factor with a pair of goals, his first 2 on the season. This was after missing 24 games when he was hurt in the season opener, but he comes back centering their top line and makes an immediate impact. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, one of my favorite names to say, 1 goal allowed on 24 shots. Buffalo, again, one of those teams, they have had their moments. This certainly was a nice one on home ice. But again, the story, Josh Norris returning and helping Buffalo get the victory over a struggling Winnipeg team, which we'll talk about in a moment. But Buffalo needing every win they could get, and they get one in this one.
Yeah, and UPL coming off a not particularly good performance. He was off for, I think, 7 days without playing his last outing at Pittsburgh, and he just wasn't very sharp in that one. And so to come out and play the way he did, I do think, outside of Josh Norris, that's a pretty big story. The other big story, Josh Doan with a couple of assists in this one, and that trade is looking really good in my mind for Buffalo. I'll have to check in on Michael Kessel. We're going to do a deeper dive on some of his numbers because
he's been hurt. He's been hurt a lot, unfortunately.
Okay. Because the thing is obviously a lot of folks were really critical of that trade when it happened, and I actually saw some of the logic in it. I think folks immediately jumped to the point totals and go, well, why would you get rid of someone like JJ Peterka? And one, he didn't want to be in Buffalo anymore, and the Sabres, I mean, let's face it, if you're going to run a team, you need to have players who want to be there. But secondly, there are other ways to win hockey games outside of having the highest possible point total. I really like the way Doan has played. I think he's actually shown more offense than people might have expected out of him. And look at Buffalo, sneakily, very much alive after multiple moments where I will fully admit I was ready to declare them dead. I say this every episode. They have had, their lows have been so bad this year. And the fact that they have weathered those valleys is actually really impressive. They have work to do, but there are multiple points in this season where you would have gone, yep, bury them. The Sabres are cooked. They're in it. They are alive in an Eastern Conference that is wide open.
Yeah, if Kesselring can stay healthy, who knows? Maybe that trade actually works out for both teams, and that's never a bad thing. You also got for Buffalo goals from Jason Zucker, Bowen Byram, and Alex Tuck. But of course, Josh Norris, again, the story in this one. For Winnipeg, the struggle is real. Obviously, just 1 goal in this one, Kyle Connor's 13th of the year. But we all know Connor Hellebuck is out, and Eric Comrie did not last long in this one. 3 goals on 14 shots. He got pulled after the first period. Thomas Milic came in and replaced him, went the rest of the way, and allowed 3 goals on 17 shots. So Winnipeg, last year's President's Trophy winners, 13-12 now in the season. They've dropped 5 of 6 since Connor Hellebuck announced that he was leaving to have that knee surgery. So it is a struggle right now for the Winnipeg Jets, no doubt.
Yeah, and you look at some of the numbers. If you going back to that point where they're announcing that Hellebuck is going to miss time, the possession numbers were pretty alarming. Not They had been moving in the right direction. Some of that had to do with guys getting healthy, Cole Perfetti coming back, but definitely Winnipeg's 5-on-5 numbers had been pedestrian, I think is fair to say. And their formula, we've seen this work before, was very simple. Limit the high dangers, let Connor Hellebuck see everything, dominate special teams. Easy formula to score points in the NHL. When you remove a piece of that formula, that is a problem. Eric Comrie has played pretty well for Winnipeg this season, but we just talked about this with Dan Vladar. This is the biggest workload that Comrie will ever have been asked to take at any point in his career. And he had played even fewer games in a season than we were talking about with Dan Vladar, who had at least gotten to 30. I don't think Comrie's ever been in more than like 19 or 20. So over the stretch of time here with an unproven backup behind him, you got to think he's going to play a lot of hockey, and the early returns are a problem in Winnipeg because unlike New Jersey, where you look at them without Hughes and 4 and 5, it's not great. It's not the end of the world. 1 and 5, if this is what we can expect from Winnipeg, they've got stuff to figure out.
One other note from the Jets, Dylan Sandberg did return to the lineup after missing 18 games with a fractured wrist. Played on the second pairing, 21 minutes and 2 seconds for him. So hopefully that can help be a part of their solution on the blue line going forward. We had the Blues hosting the Ducks, and Anaheim continues to surprise right now. They are winning without their top 2 goalies. They beat St. Louis by a score of 4-1. Let's get a report on this one and check in with the host of Locked On Anaheim Ducks, and that is Kyle Carr.
From Locked On Ducks here, and the Ducks get away with a win on their second game of a back-to-back against the St. Louis Blues after giving up a horrific loss to the Blackhawks, giving up 5 goals after being up 3-0. And this one, they do get the scoring started first, and then the Blues tie it, and then the Ducks never look back, getting this one sealed at 4-1. Kind of a back and forth game. Pretty interesting moment. Jordan Binnington gets pulled from the rink about 10 minutes into the game, screaming at Berube on the bench. So a little turmoil going on the St. Louis bench, but Anaheim Ducks come up with it. They looked a little lethargic at first, kind of sketchy after having that unfortunate loss last night, but in this one against St. Louis, they come back, get away with the W, 4-1, empty net included in there. So just a good game by the Ducks. Fly together.
All right, thanks to Kyle Carr for that. It was Jim Montgomery, not Craig Berube, who's moved on, of course, to Toronto, but it was interesting afterwards. Montgomery was asked, what did he say to you and what did you say to him? Even though everyone knew what they said to each other, but he said, he told me that he loved me and I told him that I loved him too. And then went on to, praise the virtues of Jordan Binnington's competitiveness. He said that he apologized afterwards, but yes, Jordan Binnington got pulled after 2 shots on 5 goals. Joe Holfer took over and went the rest of the way in this one. But for Anaheim, Leo Carlsson gets his 14th. Chris Kreider, 13th into an empty net, and Ville Husso, who does have NHL experience, he's probably a name you might remember, has kicked around in the NHL a little bit, is now the number 1 goalie for Anaheim because Lucas Dostal is going to be out a couple of weeks, and Peter Mrazek got injured recently as well. Don't know. I think he's more day-to-day-ish. They had to call up a guy, though, from the ECHL to be the backup, who I have never heard of. The Ducks don't really care at this point who's in net, but good job by Ville Husso. And also, we talked about special teams in the Flyers-Penguins game. Anaheim, 6 for 6 on the penalty kill in this one, and they haven't had a great penalty kill this year. So very nice for Anaheim, who still on top of the Pacific Division, 33 points now with those 2 points in St. Louis.
Jordan Binnington fired up. I've never heard of such a
Yes, exactly. It's
Never
not surprising.
It's never
Not
happened
surprising.
before. Real quick, so I've been working on this. I've been working on this very, very basic theory, and I'm using the for those familiar with the SWOT analysis, I'm using the same basic squares, and I'm calling it the Spiel analysis. My last name is Wiederspiel for folks who didn't catch that. The Spiel analysis, and it's are you good and lucky, good and unlucky, bad and lucky, bad and unlucky. And right now, the St. Louis Blues are in that last one you never want to be in. They are bad and they are unlucky. So I'm watching the third period of this game, and one of the things I kept noticing about St. Louis is they didn't necessarily not look sharp, but they didn't look sharp early, which is part of the problem. So there's the bad. And then the unlucky is when they, finally started to figure things out and figure out their game, they just could not buy a goal, could not buy a shot, owned the puck at times in that third period, and multiple moments where either set up Pavel Buchnevich with a gorgeous opportunity in as perfect a spot in the slot as you could possibly ask for, and he puts it into the goalie's gut. Didn't pick a corner, puts it into the goalie's gut. That's been his kind of season. So right now, the Blues, they are bad and they are not lucky. It's a not good place to be in.
The Sharks are in a good place. They keep scoring in bunches. Plus, we'll have our first ever edition of Ask Alex. That is next on Locked On NHL Game Night. When I'm hydrated, everything just works better. My focus, my energy, my mood, even my skin. That's why I've been using DripDrop. It is doctor-developed hydration that keeps me running at full power no matter what my day looks like. DripDrop isn't your average sports drink. It delivers 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of the leading brands using a science-backed formula trusted by medical professionals, firefighters, and over 90% of top college and pro teams. It actually tastes amazing. My go-to flavor is fruit punch, and it's become my secret weapon for staying sharp, energized all day long. Hydration has become non-negotiable for me. DripDrop helps me feel sharper, calmer, and honestly, just better overall. Right now, DripDrop is offering podcast listeners 20% off your first order. Just go to dripdrop.com, use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL. That's dripdrop.com, promo code LOCKEDONNHL for 20% off. Stock up now and keep your body and mind performing at their best with DripDrop. All right, one more game to go, and that was in San Jose, where the Shark Tank is suddenly buzzing as the Sharks took care of the Utah Mammoth 6-3, the final in this one. Let's get a report and get the first word from our host of Locked On San Jose Sharks, and that is JD Young.
The San Jose Sharks offense comes to life tonight as they beat down the Utah Mammoth 6-3. Multi-goal games from both Tyler Toffoli and Will Smith. Toffoli breaking a 12-game scoreless streak as he gets 2 tonight. Will Smith has 2 as well, including the goal of the year candidate where he just dances through the Utah Mammoth defense to score. And the Sharks got contributions up and down the lineup, but that first line was a huge story tonight. Macklin Celebrini, 3 more points, puts him second in the scoring race as he now has 40 points in 27 games. And Yaroslav Askarov had a pretty easy night tonight with the Sharks finally giving him some run support. So we'll break down this game, talk about the San Jose Sharks, who are now in a playoff spot on your next episode of Locked On Sharks, wherever you get podcasts. And of course, watch on YouTube as well.
And thanks to JD Young for that. Yes, the 4th goal of the game, the first goal for Will Smith, dancing through a couple of defenders and scoring. That was a very pretty goal indeed. He may be a bit in the shadow of Macklin Celebrini, but for those who watch Pacific Division hockey and see Will Smith, he's legit. That's 11 and 12 goals on the season for him as the sidekick, if you will, for Macklin Celebrini. That's 9-1-1 in their last 11 on home ice for the Sharks, as again the Shark Tank starting to become a place that is no longer a place that visiting teams are looking forward to going to. And as JD said, yes, the San Jose Sharks actually right now have moved into a wild card spot in the Western Conference.
I like that you mentioned sidekick, by the way. There was a stat today that they are now, Celebrini and Smith are, I believe, 5th all-time in points contributed on the same goal as teammates before the age of, I want to say it was 21. and all the other names they were with were pretty much Hall of Famers. So that's a good place to be right now if you're San Jose.
No doubt about it. We did have our third goaltender on the night get pulled in this one. Utah's Kirill Vejmelka yanked after allowing 3 goals on 9 shots. Vitek Vanacek came in, went the rest of the way. For Utah, who have now dropped 4 in a row, they did get a couple of goals from Lawson Krause in this loss. And there was some good news in that Logan Cooley did play in this game.
Huge.
In the previous game against St. Louis, he took what looked like a knee-on-knee hit, and I would have bet money he was going to miss some significant time. Turns out it wasn't knee on knee. There was no knee damage. It was diagnosed as a quad contusion. So not only did he not miss any time, he right back in the action for Utah. So he's obviously a very important player for them. So that was a silver lining that he did play in this game.
Absolutely. 1 for my fantasy team and 2 for Utah fans. Probably not in that order, though.
No. I would say no, not for most people. I understand your personal thoughts. All right, so that was the night in the NHL, and we have some extra time here, so we're going to have our first ever edition of Ask Alex. I tried to come up with some questions that were related to either one or both the teams that were in action tonight, and we were going to start with that Battle of Pennsylvania, Penguins and Flyers going at it. Of course, Pittsburgh gets the upper hand in this latest meeting. However, if you look at the standings in the East, the 2 wildcard teams right now are the Penguins and the Flyers. They both have 31 points. And based on what we've seen so far, I would say it's a surprise to see them both there as we now have moved into December. Your question, Ask Alex, for the Penguins or the Flyers, who's a playoff team in your mind based on what we've seen so far? Is it Pittsburgh? Is it Philadelphia? Is it both? Or is it neither?
All right, I don't want to move off my predictions just yet, so I'm going with neither, but I will say, yes, I've been impressed with the way both of those teams have played, because the bigger thing is both of them were supposed to be bottom feeders, right? And certainly Pittsburgh was, and I didn't have much faith in Philadelphia, so they've both already exceeded my expectations. I'm saying neither. If forced to choose one, I have a little bit more faith in Pittsburgh right now than I do in Philadelphia.
Okay, I wonder if that's because of a certain 37-year-old future Hall of Famer. It's hard to imagine anyone surpassing Nathan MacKinnon for the Hart. 20 goals, 45 points in 25 games is ridiculous. However, could 37-year-old Sidney Crosby be a Hart Trophy finalist? He's got 18 goals and 29 points in 25 games. He's 3rd in the NHL in goal scoring behind Nathan MacKinnon and the ridiculous Morgan Geekie. Maybe we're looking at a 40-goal, 90-point season for Sid. Do you think he could be a legitimate Hart Trophy finalist?
I think it's absolutely possible. I think the big challenge for Sid right now, and it's sort of the same thing that will ultimately help him, but there're going to be some split in that conversation, because if Chicago and San Jose are also fighting for playoff spots, there's going to be a lot of buzz around the way Connor Bedard and Macklin Celebrini are playing, because right now both of those guys are on pace for 120-point seasons for teams that had absolutely no chance of making the playoffs in everybody's mind. They were the 2 teams thought to be worse than Pittsburgh. So I buy that Crosby has a chance to be in the conversation at the end of the season. But one thing that's harming him is that Connor Bedard and Macklin Celebrini are doing something that all of us thought was impossible when this season began, which is actually carrying their teams in a way that we would not have expected.
2 teams in action tonight, both missing star players. New Jersey, no Jack Hughes. Winnipeg, no Connor Hellebuck. The Devils are 4-5 without Hughes. You mentioned it. The Jets are 1-4 without Hellebuck. He's expected to miss 3 to 5 more weeks. Hughes is still going to be out 6 more weeks with that freak injury to the finger. Who is the more important missing piece at this point?
Yeah, it's got to be Hellebuck. I really wanted to say Jack Hughes, but it has to be Hellebuck. Obviously, for starters, goalies are the most important position on the ice. He's the best player at the most important position on a team that's uniquely built around him. And when he's out, you can tell. And this is a problem, because we just thought to ourselves, okay, all Winnipeg has to do after their good start to the season, they were 12-7, just tread water. They're not even doing that right now. The Devils at least are treading water. Their head might be starting to sink a little bit below it. 4-5 is under 500, but right now, Winnipeg is fully submerged without him.
Which Canadian team that made the playoffs last season is in bigger trouble? Winnipeg, Edmonton, or Toronto?
Okay, this is a fantastic question. I am going to go with Toronto. Obviously, have lots of concern about Winnipeg, but I'd like to think that almost by default, they will find a way to win enough games to stay in the race until Hellebuck gets back, is healthy, and rested. Toronto has serious goaltending concerns when everybody is healthy. We don't know what type of workload Joseph Woll can handle. Remember, this is not a guy who's been a 1A. And then the guy who was the 1A, Anthony Stolarz, when he was healthy this season, he was bad. It was great last season. He was bad, though, during his stretch this season. So I'm already worried there. And let's face it, this is not the most scientific answer, but unlike Winnipeg, the vibes seemed real off in Toronto right now. And yeah, the win over Pittsburgh the other night was good. Maybe getting Austin Matthews, Matthew Nyes, getting those guys back is going to be important. But when the vibes seem off as well as the goaltending, I have concerns. So I am most concerned about Toronto right now.
I agree with you, by the way. All right, one more Ask Alex, and we'll go out to the West Coast. The Ducks are having a fantastic season. In first place in the Pacific, 33 points in 26 games. The Sharks, though, 29 points in 27 games, and they, as we mentioned, are currently in a wild card spot. Who is the bigger surprise out west, the Ducks or the Sharks?
Yeah, I think it has to be the Sharks. I actually had the Ducks making the playoffs as the third team in the Pacific Division during my preseason predictions. So while I am surprised at just how good they've been, this isn't a huge stretch, and they could still come down to earth a little bit. San Jose, I thought, was going to be a bottom 3 team in the league. I thought they were going to show signs, but this is more than signs at this point. I am shocked at how well John Klingberg, Dmitry Orlov, those guys have fit in, because those could have been huge holes for San Jose. And I get it. Some of this is Askarov. Some of this is just how good Celebrini and Will Smith have been. But William Eklund is playing really well as well. I think the part that's most shocking is San Jose just appears to be an entire year early. So I'm going to give them the nod here as more surprising.
All right. Good stuff. I enjoyed our first ever edition.
Good question.
Ask Alex. Good job. Good answers. Good answers. Hey, if you want complete coverage of your favorite NHL team, find the Locked On NHL podcast and YouTube show for your squad. And of course, we will be here for you each and every night until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned on Locked On NHL Game Night. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Give us your comments on anything that happened in the night in the NHL. That will do it for this episode of Locked On NHL Game Night. For Alex Wiederspiel, I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you for listening and watching Locked On NHL Game Night, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day.